Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Gyan Bhakti. We are currently exploring the scripture Mysticism of Mahabharata. Commentaries by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda Ji Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So in today's satsang, we will discuss Bhishma's vow and the marriage of Satyavati with Shantanu. So Bhishma's renunciation of progeny and kingdom, which is what he had decided to do to please his father, to say, I will never be the king and I will also never marry. We had covered that in yesterday's Satsanga. So continuing, his renunciation of progeny and kingdom are characteristic of one with purity of will. If we have pure will, our mind goes after liberation alone. Nothing matters in this world. Why? Because it's transient. Everything is temporary. By developing the spirit of brahmacharya, meaning restraint of passion, and of sannyasa. Sannyasa is renunciation. An aspirant cultivates the dynamic will which Bhishma represents. Therefore, the term Bhishma Vrata, Bhishma's vow. To have death at one's command is really not something incredible or impossible. Actually, when understood properly, it is a goal to be realized by every individual. So the boon that he received from his father Shantanu, Bhishma had Ichha Mrityu. Ichha means will, and Mrityu death. So death at will. Mystically meaning that fear of death should go away for all of us. Death does not affect our soul. It affects only that which we erroneously believe ourselves to be due to ignorance. So it's all avidya or ignorance that keeps us deluded. This present personality which is subject to death is not us. So we have to remember we are not this body. When we have sufficient purity of will, we realize that the deeper us is deathless. We are immortal. Then death comes to us like a servant, not like a master, because we are always ready for it. But when we do not have sufficient purity of will, death is always terrifying, a horrible experience. We don't want to think about it. Thus, the test of true philosophy is overcoming fear of death. And we had discussed that in the last few satsangas about Abhinivesh Klesh, it's called, fear of death. It is humorously said that you can teach a parrot to say Ram, 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 Krishna, 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 and the parrot will go on repeating those divine names every day. But when a cat comes near the bird, it starts screeching in its own language. It forgets about the divine names at that time. It is easy to be devotional and philosophical in theory and to utter many words of wisdom. But theory alone is not enough. It must enter our heart. As we advance, whenever there is suffering and pain, there should be a spontaneous internal movement towards God. Our mind should be supported by divine love, even when we do not have any other support in the world, because the one supporting the whole world is God. Mystically speaking, if the will aspect of our personality becomes divine, if our sankalpa, willpower, becomes satsankalpa, meaning divine willpower, willing the truth, we will not be afraid of death. The fear goes away. At any time death comes to us is the time we are ready to go, because we have given up this false identification with the body. We are not in contradiction with death at that time. So this is the mystical meaning. So let's move to the episode Brides for Vichitravirya. Satyavati and Shantanu gave birth to two sons, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. And before long, Shantanu died, leaving Chitrangada, the elder son, as king. However, soon this king also died in battle, and the young Vichitravirya ascended to the throne. As his protector, Bhishma ruled the kingdom in Vichitravirya's name and set about to find a wife for the young king at the request of his mother Satyavati. In ancient times, it was customary for princesses to choose their husbands at a Swayamvara. Vara means the person they select, Swayam means themselves. So they used to take a garland and all the princes would be invited, and whoever the princess garlanded was the person to be her future husband. So, or festivity where they came. So, although this custom gave the princess a chance to choose her husband, there was another custom also which allowed any warrior who was mighty enough to enter the Swayamvara and merely carry off the princesses by force. Entering such a Swayamvara with this in mind, Bhishma won Amba, Ambika and Ambalika and brought the three princesses to be married to Vichitravirya. So he got all three for Satyavati's son Vichitravirya. Ambika and Ambalika were happy to be married to the king, but Amba had her heart set on someone else, and she expressed that view to Bhishma that she was in love with another king. He agreed to her wish and had her escorted back to the king of her choice. But he refused her. That king said, "You have gone with Bhishma, so therefore I will no longer accept you." Refused by him, Amba became caught in a predicament that had important implications in the unfoldment of the plot of the Mahabharata. These we will discuss later in Bhishma Parva when we discuss those details. Not long after his marriage to the two princesses, Vichitravirya also died, leaving the line of Shantanu without heirs to the throne. So imagine all the greed that Satyavati's father wanted. Seems like it became a curse. Nothing happened. Both the sons also died, and they had no kids through that. And Bhishma had given up. He said he will not marry, and he will also not take the throne. So concerned about this, Satyavati now asked Bhishma to renounce his vow of lifetime celibacy, meaning Nashtika Brahmachari, lifetime, and marry Ambika and Ambalika. So that's what Satyavati asked him to do, whom he treated as his mother. But when Bhishma reaffirmed the sacredness of his vow, Satyavati decided to invoke the help of Sage Vyasa, whom she had given birth to in a strange way while yet a young virgin girl. So Vyasa was born through divine intervention, through God's grace, and we will discuss that next, the birth of Vyasa. According to a most unusual story in the Mahabharata, Satyavati's mother was a celestial apsara, or a queen, like the heavenly nymph. But Satyavati was mysteriously born as a human girl through the body of a fish. Because of this strange birth, the girl had a fishy smell that emanated from her for miles and miles, and thus she was called Matsya Gandha. Gandha means smell, Matsya means fish. So according to the story, Matsya Gandha, through union with sage Parashara, gave birth to sage Vyasa. As a result of that virgin birth, Matsya Gandha became blessed with an all-pervading heavenly fragrance that replaced her fishy smell, and she then became known as Yojan Gandha. Yojan means 7 miles, and the fragrance became so blissful and permeating that it would be felt from 7 miles away even. It is said that Vyasa grew up within seconds after his birth, and with the Vedas in his hands took leave of his mother, because he was a divine incarnation, and Vyasa is the one who created the Vedas, who created the Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Puranas, and all the scriptures. He has done immense work in the Sanatana Dharma. So therefore we call it Vyasuchisht, meaning we cannot say, do or speak of anything in which Vyasa has not already commented upon, which meaning that his knowledge was so vast that he has touched upon every detail. So before departing, he told Satyavati that he would return to her whenever she remembered him and wished for his presence. That is called Matri Rin, the death to the mother. It was this child, Sage Vyasa, that Mother Satyavati now invoked to help bring about progeny for the line of Shantanu. This is a highly mystical story that gives insight into the role of bhavana or feeling in spiritual movement. Although the feeling in every human heart is essentially divine, due to ignorance it becomes cramped in the fishy environment of impure vasanas or subtle desires. The feeling that is conditioned by egoism, attachment and hatred is represented by Matsya Gandha or fishy, stinky smell. But once one comes under the influence of a sage, guru, Swamiji's spiritual people in Satsangha, it represented by union with Sage Parashara. This is what she came into contact with, Satsangha. Vyasa or wisdom is born through that association. Then one's vasanas become pure and divinely fragrant like Yojana Gandha. So with this we conclude our satsang for today, and I will see you tomorrow. Hari Om Tat Sat.